All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, episode number 188.
All right.
Tom Irvine, joined by my co-host Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and those dog-faced pony soldiers.
And who knows what else is going to come along the line.
I'm sure they're cooking up something. Vote deniers. We
Yeah.
deny vote. You don't get to vote with us. We decide.
Yeah. It's been a while since we had a phrase that we really needed to have coined here.
Yeah.
All right. So let's. I'm going to say that the weather's been a little chilly, but at least today it probably will warm up a little bit. But,
yeah, and then supposedly heavy snow again this weekend. So Sunday going into Monday, I mean, it could be more than a foot of snow. So, we're gonna have real winter this year.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I haven't looked at the head of the weather forecast. What was this coming in on Saturday or Sunday or what's
Sunday, starting Sunday 10, 11 o'clock in the morning and going till about 4 or 5 in the afternoon on Monday.
Okay.
That's a lot of time for snow.
Yeah. And at least where I live, I don't get normally hit as hard as some of the other areas, but if you get snow, we'll still probably get something. And as you well know, having lived here for a number of years now, that the this metro area, snow and ice just paralyze it.
Yeah,
unlike places like Idaho and Utah and places that are used to it, they know how to handle it. But we go into panic mode every time snow hits.
Every time. Looking forward to panicking this weekend.
Yeah, it could be another snow day for school kids, and they're going to run out of
snow week as we had here in Fairfax. They they did sort of a soft COVID closing. So once it snowed last week, Monday you could sort of see because they hadn't had a chance to clean the ice off the schools and whatnot. But we were out all week last week, right? They didn't start back till Monday.
Yeah. It was kind of a lost week for learning in a lot of ways. It just
no virtual. So I mean, you just were there on your own.
Yeah, it just became the extended vacation. All right, our wonderful president and vice president making the big push on voting rights. The Devils went down to Georgia and trying to convince America that we've got to have these voting rights laws. It's the John Lewis, HR 1, I guess it is. And so, John Lewis, obviously an icon in Georgia, so you do a lot of things to make political hay, including, Biden, saying that he's tired of being kind of quiet and he's pushing for a change in the Senate rules on the filibuster because we got to get this done, right? So where are we with this?
Well, first of all, let's point out that the economy is in free fall. The last month was the worst jobs report of the Biden presidency. Fewer than 200,000 jobs created in the whole country. So now you're talking about less than 4,000 a state, which is a pretty bad. That's a pretty bad ratio. 4,000 people in Virginia, that's not good. Maryland either. You have the border, you have a crisis at the border. Your COVID policy is imploding by the day. You have, big funding problems in the government and so forth. This is what you're focusing on, right? A bill that makes it easier for you to cheat in elections, right? They say we're cheating, but they're the ones who want unattended ballot boxes. They're the ones who oppose voter ID, right? They're the ones who want to make it where defy the one man, one vote principle, right? Anything they can do to be able to get extra unaccounted for ballots into the system and get them counted like they did in 2020. That's what these bills are for. And they don't let the states choose on their own how they want to be, right? This is like to federalize election law. The prospects of it are not good. Senator Manchin has said he will not vote for this. He not vote for the John Lewis Act. The other one he worked on, the version that is together now, he worked on with the president, but he said he will not vote to. Manchin said he will not vote in the filibuster. Senator Sinema from Arizona has said she will not vote in the filibuster. Senator Kelly from Arizona who's up in a dangerous reelect this year, says that he does not know that he could vote to end the filibuster. So he goes down to Georgia and he criticizes Republicans, but I mean the problem is not the problem is their caucus is not in line on this, right? The Republicans are doing what Republicans do, and it's 3 Democrats and maybe more. Sinema and Manchin say there are several more Republicans who they don't have to voice opposition to this because Manchin and Sinema take the lead on it, but they are also opposed. So it's a lot farther from becoming law than you think it is. Now, the other implication of this is the progressives made a deal, right? As you will recall, they did not want to vote for the economic stimulus legislation, right? Unless this passed with it. Okay. So they were talked into voting for it and waiting for this to pass. And if this doesn't pass, then you're going to have a major schism in the Democrat Party because they're going to realize that, the word wasn't kept. We passed the one they agreed to pass, but we didn't pass the one that they were there to get passed. So, this could end up being a major problem for Democrats. The thing that I don't understand is why seems to me like a suicide mission, right? They're not going to be able to call it off the calendar. They're not going to be able to get it to the 4-4 vote. If it got to the 4-4 vote, it would fail. It would fail straight up. Even if they somehow got around the filibuster, right, which would be extremely stupid given that they're about to lose control of the Senate and the House, right? If you lose control of the filibuster, you can have all kind of legislation sitting on Biden's desk that he doesn't want to sign or veto, right? So, this would be a major problem for them. And I don't see what this gets them, right? They won the election with the current cheating, right? So
yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on here with all of this, and I think for me, a lot of this goes back to the problems that Biden and Harris are having, the administration is having, is that they haven't been able to get anything done. Here we are about a week away from their 1 year, since taking office, and they've got very little to show for anything here as having been accomplished. It's hard for the media to keep propping them up because they seem to just lose one thing after another. And
things are getting worse. I mean, it's not just a flat line. I mean, things are still going down,
Right. I mean, they control Congress and they can't get anything through. And as you point out, I mean, Biden and Harris, either together or singularly, they can criticize the Republicans all they want about stonewalling and stalling things. But as you point out, the problem really is in their own caucus where they can't get everybody to be on the same page, with Manchin and Sinema. And then we have those others like Kelly, like Tester and others that are, kind of in the background saying, hey, look, I mean, if we were forced to vote for some of this stuff, I'm not sure that we could, Manchin and Sinema are kind of taking the lead on all of this. But that's where the problem is. That's where the Democrats have got to solve that. If they get their people in alignment, then they can try to pressure some of the Republicans. Because I think we talked a week or two ago about Collins, Murkowski, and Romney. The Democrats were trying to go after them, but they hadn't. But that was another one of their desperation moves because they hadn't solved the Manchin Sinema issue. So, and you're right. I mean, it's out there. What do they get by trying to push this and force this issue? I mean, where does, Biden, trying to change the filibuster rules, I mean, that only gets the Republicans more riled up, I think, and keeps them more unified, saying like, no, because we're not going to roll over and play dead on this. We're going to stick together. And, they've got a couple of Democrats on their side, kind of. So, they know that they're kind of controlling this agenda. But the Democrats seem to be getting increasingly desperate because here we are in January, 2022. We've got an election, really now, just less than 10 months away now, for which is not looking good. They've had 26 Democrats, said they're not going to run again for office. I mean, the Republicans are maybe half that number or less. Some of these people are going to run for other offices and other, things like governor or other things like that. But it does create a problem for the House, for the Democrats, of like when you've got this many retirements, how you maintain hold on all of these seats while the
Right.
Republicans
In this mood, right? I mean, if you think about the guy in New Jersey who beat the state Senate's president, right? I mean, no one knew who this guy was. He was somebody that got denied a gun permit, right? So, in this kind of climate, political climate, their safe seats aren't necessarily safe without an incumbent, right? Like I'm thinking, Alberto Cirrus up in New Jersey quits. Okay, that's normally a safe district. It doesn't really matter if he quits. They find some other Democrat, right? But in the climate we're in today, not being an incumbent in that race makes a lot of difference, right? Could tip the balance of that race. So, things are changing on all these fronts. I think part of this is they're trying to keep that progressive wing from revolting, right? And they're running their heads into a wall here, and they're not going to win this, but they can tell the progressives they tried.
Yeah, and we haven't seen, once again, we haven't seen the final maps throughout the entire country of how the congressional seats are being allocated. As I said before, the Democrats are going to protect the Democrats. Republicans are going to try to increase, the Republican, districts in the states that they've got control over. But in the end, too, with these Democrats, when they retire, I'd say that, even after redistricting, you're going to have to be probably a D plus, I don't know, 12 or 15 to say that you're probably likely to keep it. If you're D plus 10 or less, then that's a risky thing without an incumbent. That definitely means that seat could go into toss-up territory and could be won. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, we both know the power of the incumbency. I mean, it is a very, very powerful. I mean, you have that. You have to really stumble and fall on your face, and some people have done it to lose your seat. When you're an incumbent, and especially if you're an incumbent in a plus 10 or whatever district, but it's not impossible for that to happen. If you don't have the incumbent, then it becomes really a crapshoot unless you design it so it's like a plus 15, 20, or 30 or something like that. And there are not going to be a ton of those seats available anyway. You can't draw enough of those seats, for either side, because somebody's going to suffer one way or the other. You want to get a safe seat, but they always have to balance all those things out. And I say in North Carolina, I guess a court approved the redistricting of Republicans, though there's going to be another appeal. But anyway, we're in January. I mean, there isn't a lot of time for these things to be settled. I mean, Maryland's got
you can't run for office in 10 minutes. It takes months. It takes a long time.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's difficult for those that are running for office. They're trying to figure out, especially if you're in a state that lost seats, right? Because if you lost one or two seats or whatever, that somebody in that delegation, Republican or Democrat, is going to lose out depending upon which way your state legislature is, leaning. And at that point in time, you need to know as soon as possible exactly what that map is to decide whether or not you are going to try to run in another district, or where you're going to run, or whether or not you're the guy that's going to be squeezed out. I mean, we're, like I said, we're less than 10 months away. The clock is ticking. Courts don't necessarily move all that fast. I'm sure they'll move faster than they normally would try to get this resolved, but it still is going to leave a very narrow, window for a lot of these people to figure out exactly where the heck they're going. Maryland, is an example of, where states where they tried to have that nonpartisan, commission to draw the map. But, with the Democrats basically controlling everything in the state except for the governors, we know that map was never going to get anywhere. And so, they're putting the squeeze on the Republicans, and that it's not just, people have to remember, it's not just the congressional map. In a lot of states, it also affects, like it does in Maryland, it's also the redrawing of the legislative maps as well. And those maps, because the Democrats in Maryland, hold the majority, they draw those and they are squeezing. I mean, there's a lot of discussion in my Republican circles about how they're trying to realign this, to try to prevent, any Republicans from winning and squeezing more Republicans out. We actually have a Republican in Howard County, a relatively new delegate. He took a seat that had been vacated by another Republican, and it looks like part of his district is going to come into Montgomery County, and that hurts him. That hurts him, his chances of winning. I don't know, what in the end, whether or not he will win. He may still be strong enough to win there. And it would create that situation where, for the first time in probably more than a decade or whatever it's been, is that if this guy wins, we would actually technically have a Republican representing part of Montgomery County in the state legislature. But the squeeze is on, and I don't think like in Maryland, I don't think anybody really cares, or they don't understand how powerful these things are. That the squeeze, the one party state effect on this, as it just squeezes these people out. You don't get two sides of an argument anymore. And with our Maryland state legislature having turned more towards the left, it's like, and the governor being in this is his last term, to me, it's like, they're going to go full bore, because they're like, this is the lame duck governor. He doesn't have much power. So what's he going to do? And this situation will be replayed in a lot of other places as well. But it hits home for me, and particularly.
Anyway. By the way, I don't know if you saw this. Baltimore Sun poll. Biden approval rating in Maryland was 52%. Harris was 42%. This is Maryland. This is only Maryland. And Hogan was 72%. So they better be careful how they draw these maps, because there's a little more play in there than there usually is, just because of the national mood.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I mean, with Hogan, even though I have a lot of my conservative Republican friends are not big fans of his, and I understand why, because Hogan has not been a conservative governor, but he's in a blue state with an overwhelming Democrat majority in both the House and the Senate. He doesn't have a lot of wiggle room. He's done a lot. He's done what he can based on the powers, where he doesn't have to use the legislature to get things through. He's done a lot of really good things. I think he'd make a really good Senate candidate, in Maryland. Of course, these guys have got presidential ambitions, and like, that's a non-starter with me. But where we need the help in the Senate, try to fight back and get a credible. If he ran, even if he didn't win a Senate seat, if he ran against any one of these Democrats, he would probably get more votes than anyone had in years. And that could bring others along and help others on the down ballot, in that year.
Yeah. So, and they're neither one of those guys, they're both entrenched Maryland politicians, Van Hollen and Cardin.
Right.
Neither one of them are big newsmakers, household names, right? They're both vulnerable. Is one of them up in 24? Is either of them up in 24? Do you know?
Somebody's coming up. I'm sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a live thing. We got a guy with a 70% approval rating, as long as he's been in office, right? That's pretty good. That's pretty strong in a place like Maryland.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and the thing is that he did what Ehrlich didn't do. I mean, Ehrlich was a much more conservative governor for Maryland, and then wound up, losing. He lost the race for re-election, and then he tried again, and he did even worse, when he ran for the third time. But Hogan is the kind of guy, because he has worked both sides of the aisle. He has been very bipartisan, and his attacks on Trump, play well in Maryland on top of that. So that makes him a very viable candidate in Maryland. And there's no doubt that something's going on with Hogan, because he's basically going back to his playbook from 2014 or 2013, before he got elected in 2014, of basically building up an organization that basically acts as a shadow campaign group, but is very bipartisan or nonpartisan as it raises money, as it brings in donors and other supporters. And by doing that, he has a launching pad, in 2024 or whenever he wants to go and do whatever he wants to do. That helped him a heck of a lot in winning, in 2014. And so I think that, I don't know what he's calling. I don't know if he's still calling it Change Maryland, but it's whatever the successor is to Change Maryland. In essence, is it's going to serve as his kind of his pack, and we'll just build a war chest, and they'll kind of look at the process and say, what's the landscape look like? And it, I mean, you've got Biden and you got Biden up for re-election in 2024. You look at it today, it's like this is a disaster for them. And it could be another good Republican year in 2024 following 2022.
Right, really could.
So we'll have to wait and see with that. But this whole idea that the Democrats, that Biden is trying to push this, basically what is a federalizing of elections, right, is ridiculous. And that's the thing that people have got to waken up to. Is just says like, look, the Democrats have just thrown a lot of demagoguery over this kind of thing. I mean, what did Biden say in his speech? I mean, he basically said that, if you're against, Abraham Lincoln, then you're against this law. I mean, he threw all these things in about Jefferson Davis and Abraham Lincoln and all these kind of things. It's like, what the heck is he talking about?
Yeah.
It's
bizarre speech. And ridiculously mean-spirited, right? Ridiculously accusatory and, false, blatantly lying in different parts of it. I think, the other thing that needs to be pointed out here is, Biden presented himself as a uniter, and he would bring the country together and so forth. He is basically writing off anybody who ever supported Trump at this point, right? He's basically saying they're going to vote against me and I won. So, there must not be enough of them to beat me. And so I'm not going to, I'm not going to worry about those people one bit. I'm going to stick my heel in their face as hard and long as I can. So, it's kind of bizarre, the choices they're making, and they're sure, they seem, I mean, I don't know, but they seem sure losers, right? They're going to lose the voting rights votes, both of them. They're going to not even get it off the calendar. They're going to lose Build Back Better. They're not even going to get that off the calendar. And not because the Republicans are, Republicans didn't win elections promising to vote for this stuff, right? Democrats did. So, they don't have their own people in line, and they're not going to get it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's right. I mean, the thing is just that the Democrats they've got a huge problem. They've got these bills that they basically have promised that they would take care of this, right? And they always, they couch the whole, voting rights thing about the evil Republicans, and all the voting, because we have to do this because the states have, the Republicans have forced states to restrict voting rights. But I think as the Wall Street Journal pointed out, that Biden seems to have ignored the fact that in Georgia, that how do you call for voter suppression if you have like 64% of the blacks came out to vote? That's not suppressing the black vote by any stretch of the imagination. 36% of the blacks apparently came out in Massachusetts. That's a liberal state. So I mean this, and we've seen in Georgia, even with tight, with these tight, voter laws that they've had in place, with requiring ID, people were still voting in very high numbers. So they're picking on the wrong state, and they're going about this the wrong way. And it's just this is just something, as you said, they had promised in essence to get all these things through. They're at a point where they're not, and it's almost as if the strategy now is okay. We've tried to be nice. But now we're
nice about vaccines. Now we're going to go around making everybody get one.
Yeah. Now we're going to tell the truth. I mean, the J6 speech by Biden, the speech yesterday on the voting rights. Now there's a different tenor and tone by Biden in terms of he's coming out. He's either, if he's not saying it by name, he's doing, at least by inference, that everybody knows who and what he's referring to in these things. And I just think, once again, I go back to my thing is, I just see this as desperation by the Democrats. They don't have a policy. They don't have a plan. They don't have a strategy to win here at this point. They don't know how they're going to get their programs through. So now it's like, okay, let's make a little course correction, change the tenor and the tone a little bit, see if that helps us if we can demonize the Republicans, maybe that'll work. But that's going to fail too. The voters aren't buying that now.
Voters aren't buying it.
So it's what do they do? So I want to use this as my segue to this thing, which I thought was really funny. I thought Doug Schoen and some other guy, they wrote an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal, and they were trying to make the case that things are so bad for Biden and Harris that this paves the way for Hillary Clinton to make a comeback.
Well, Hillary is making the rounds, and Doug Schoen's a Clinton pollster. That's how he got into this, right? So he knows what the Clintons are thinking. And she is making the rounds and talking to people, and I guess she's advising Harris and, on the side, and talking about writing another book, I think. I don't see them going for that this time. They're not like us. They don't actually let the people pick like this time. They all stopped in the middle of the primary process and said, okay, we're going to give this to Biden. Well, others are ahead. They have more money and organization and votes. Yeah, but Biden's the guy. And then they all like, okay, never mind the votes. Biden's the guy, right? So they're not married to picking this in any kind of democratic way, right? So that's how she got picked when she got picked. They told everybody to sit down and let her have it. So, now, I don't know that the AOC wing of the party is going to stand for Hillary Clinton as their standard bearer, right? I think they will rightfully raise questions about whether she can win, especially in what's likely to be the climate in 2024 at the end of a, completely failed administration, economy in tatters, world situation in gosh knows what state, border being overrun and so forth. So, I don't know that they just accept that. They just take that cram down. I think it'll be interesting to see. But she is interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that she's still stewing over the fact that she lost, and she wants another shot at this. But it does seem to me that at this point in time, that.
And by the way, let me just ask you this: has she conceded in 2016 yet? I don't think she has. So
no, Stacey Abrams didn't do it either. So
right. So don't tell us about not conceding, because you guys don't concede. You don't believe any election ever ends. Y'all don't recognize any result. So all those things you accuse us of doing, you don't do them either. So
yeah, and that's conveniently swept under the rug. It's always like it's different. It's not the same situation. It's different. It's like, I'm sorry. I was like, no. I mean, like, look, if you're going to accuse the Republicans, and saying that, about the 2020 election, then let's talk about Hillary and her, her lack of, conceding, and then Stacey Abrams, who's made a career out of this whole darn thing, and become this martyr in essence, and all. So, and the interesting thing is that apparently Stacey Abrams was too busy to attend the speech.
Right, she was somewhere else. I wondered about that. I guess she had some nice stuff to say about it afterwards, but it is interesting that she couldn't fix her schedule to see the president when he came to Atlanta.
Especially on voting rights. I mean, this is she has created an organization on this issue, right? She's been fighting all this, all the, so-called discriminatory things, that are going on there, and the voter suppression, all this. And so Biden and Harris come to make, in essence, what's a major speech on voting rights, and she's nowhere to be found. It's like, hello. I mean, you're like the poster child in Georgia about voting rights, and you're not there. So that is a very strange thing that goes on there. But sometimes I wonder, almost in a way, whether or not she also says, yeah, it's a major speech, but it is Biden and Harris, and their poll numbers suck.
Right, that's right.
Do I really want to be?
I mean, that's the obvious implication is she doesn't want to be seen with those people.
Yeah.
She's, that it doesn't help her, right?
No.
She's trying to run against Brian Kemp again or something, right?
Right. So yeah, I found that to be interesting. But for me, Hillary, I don't know. For me, I mean, I would have thought that Hillary's time is now come and gone. That people like this, to me, I mean, Hillary can do what you've been saying. I mean, advise other candidates, advise administration officials, whatever. Be that that elder stateswoman in this case of the party, right? And do that. And when you do that, a lot of times when you do that, you really kind of resurrect yourself, or you kind of soften up the rough edges that Hillary, a lot of
Cheney,
yeah, a lot of the baggage that Hillary Clinton has can be softened and smoothed over and improved, and that her place in history gets much improved by doing that. She jumps back into the fray. Then everything opens up again. Then all the attack. Her history is still out there. It's game. And I just don't know that the Democrats want to go there. But the problem for the Democrats is that when they look at 2024, and I think we've talked about this too, is exactly where are they going to go? If you're looking at it at right now with lousy poll numbers for Biden and Harris, you've got a problem. You don't have the incumbency here is not helping you. You don't see a smooth path to have another Democrat president in 2024. It's looking increasingly dicey, and that you'd have to open it up and you got to find somebody else. And that's, that gives the Republicans even a greater chance to win the president's White House back in 2024. So, they've got just a lot of issues.
Yeah. One thing I want to say too is about that January 6th speech. He talked about the peaceful transfer of power. Power was not peacefully transferred to Trump, right? What did they do to Trump? They went out and sold a bill of goods that they knew every word of it was false, that they ran it past the intelligence agencies, then went to journalists and said, hey, the intelligence agencies are looking at reports of, right? And then so they all went out and wrote it. It was like a circular deal they had going there. David Corn and others cooperating with their friends in the Democrat Party. So you ended up with, Trump spent the first 2.5 years of his presidency fighting off blatantly false charges, right? Because they didn't want to, admit the truth that he wanted.
And when Trump came into office, there were lots of protests. They didn't get to the level of J6 in terms of, we didn't have the other side, storming the Capitol per se, but there were cars.
You had them storming the White House. You had them burning cars in the streets of Washington. We were down there watching it. That was a lot fierier protest than, and especially if you add in what happened the next day, that's far bigger and more damaging to security of the town and so forth than J6.
And that to me, that's once again another selective memory issue with the media, because look, I will never excuse the behavior of the people on January 6th. Okay, there was a lot of bad behavior by these people, but on the other hand, to basically totally ignore and whitewash what happened 4 years previous when Trump came into office, that's not doing your job. They're not doing their job at all, and people. Americans they do forget. I mean, their memory is short. They remember recent things. And when the media doesn't compare the two, if they would compare the two, at least you'd have a little bit of perspective. But everything's all focused on J6 and all the stuff that happened there. And so I think there's a hugely distorted view of what's going on here as a result of this. And that's fodder for the Democrats, fodder for the liberals. And the liberals get off the hook for 2016 and all the stuff.
Well, and the other thing to think about J6 is about what 400, 500, 40,000, 50,000 people went to Trump's speech, right? About we arrested 700 people so far, and they're casting the net as wide as they can. Okay, so if you go in, if you hit a cop, if you throw stuff at cops, if you steal property, you destroy property, then you should be prosecuted for those things, right? But Republicans get to protest too. They get to oppose too. They get to question whether the election processes were handled properly too. They covered the windows, right? They put coverings over the windows so the observers could not observe. Now, whatever you think about the observers, you don't do that if you're on the up and up, right? You don't do that if you're running a straight election. You don't cover the counters, you don't block the view of the counters, right? Unless you're up to no good. I mean, I've never heard an explanation for that passes scrutiny. But, so they don't have any moral high ground here. The intensity that's being applied to, quit telling us we cheated, quit claiming that big lie, this and that and the other, sounds like somebody doesn't really want scrutiny, right? It sounds like they're trying to quash any debate over this issue.
Yeah.
Just me, but it does. And also now, I guess, they have the, do you know who Ray Epps is?
Yeah.
You heard about this? Okay. So, Ray Epps, for those who don't know, is a guy, there's a lot of video of him the night before J6 and that day encouraging people to come to the Capitol. He was on the FBI's most wanted list right after this, but then he was taken off the most wanted list, and he is living on his ranch in Arizona, and the FBI is watching over his ranch in Arizona. But they're not doing anything to him because it is widely suspected that he worked for them. The J6 committee released something about this yesterday. Finally, they acknowledged that there's enough videotape and there's enough questions that they had to say something. They said they had interviewed him, and he said he didn't work for the FBI. Ted Cruz asked the FBI, and they refused to answer any questions or acknowledge any of this that ever happened. So, I mean, you're at the source of, and especially with the Gretchen Whitmer plot being, we now know that was almost wholly a product of the FBI, right? The FBI rounded up people and proposed this plan and tried to carry it out. It now looks like one of the tactics of the left is going to be to create crimes that Republicans committed, right? And so, I'm increasingly convinced that if not 2022, 2024, you're going to be able to run for federal office saying, if you elect me, I will vote to defund the FBI. I think that's going to be a winning political position by 2024.
Well, I'll try to remember that, and we'll see what happens. One of Brian's predictions here. All right, quickly, I just want to kind of at least talk a little bit about this, the vaccine mandate hitting the Supreme Court. And it seems that the conservative justices were a little skeptical, to say the least, of Biden administration's reasoning behind trying to put this into play. The liberal justices had a different opinion, including Sonia Sotomayor, who just can't come up with any decent facts, and some crazy thing about how many children, all these children that were sick, and how most of them are on ventilators and all this kind of nonsense and stuff like that, for which she's being called out for. But yeah, I don't think, at least based on the initial what we see from the oral arguments that started, it doesn't look good for this rule, that this attempt by the Biden administration to force this vaccine mandate on employees is going to actually hold up.
Well, I don't want to read the tea leaves of the Roberts Court, because I think that's a fool's errand. I'm not sure where they're going with it. I think he's trying to look. He personally, Chief Justice, is trying to look for a way to get to yes, or some modified form of yes on this. So don't count on them, but don't count them out. They've also said they're going to release at least one and maybe two decisions tomorrow. I suspect one of them will be this. Oral arguments are Friday in the case for the healthcare. Can they mandate this for healthcare workers? That one may end up being moot, because you're now letting people back on the job who have COVID once they're past the transmission part of it, right? Because they fired people for not getting vaxxed. So you have people up there with COVID so that you don't have to have people who are not sick and were working until these mandates came in, but they're not vaxxed. Okay. The other thing is to ask yourself, like, why are all these medical people against this? Right? Why are all the people who actually treat patients in this say no vax and yes to ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine? The people on the ground. And so, I mean, that's some questions they need to answer. As for Justice Sotomayor, she said 100,000 kids were on ventilators. There are 3,000 kids in the country in ICUs. Very few, if any of them, are on ventilators, right? The CDC admitted this week that the average person who died of COVID had at least 4 comorbidities. So it's dying with, not of, right? And now she has been asked to estimate of the 800,000 odd Americans who have died, who are said to have died of COVID, how many of those were COVID and how many of those were they had COVID when they died of something else. So, the COVID vax whole regime is crumbling, right? The UK is now saying too many boosters is bad, right? And we're not going to keep giving boosters because the boosters themselves are a problem. Their all-cause deaths is up 15-20%. And all-cause deaths here are up more than 10%. People never seen a rise like they are. Sotomayor saying these things, right? The fact she says there's 100,000 kids on ventilators, and there's actually 3,000 in the hospital, and probably fewer than 100 on a ventilator, right? Means what? It means she is getting the facts she's relying on to make these decisions from, I don't know, MSNBC or CNN or somebody like that. And, she's not, the filter is complete with her. She is not ever getting to the point where she can, discern truth, right? Because she's only hearing left-wing talking points about that. And that's kind of dangerous if you're going to have someone in that situation, that much power in the country.
Yeah, on the healthcare workers, I mean, my son-in-law, he works in a hospital. Everybody in the family that's eligible to get vaccinated has been vaccinated. Even my older grandkids, who my daughter said weren't crazy about the idea, but she just felt better about that. And that's a decision that they made, and that's fine. I think for the healthcare workers, I mean, look, if you don't want to get vaccinated, fine. And if the hospital says, then the alternative, which to be the way that a lot of things go with a lot of these deals, is that you need regular testing, then I don't see really the problem with them not being vaccinated. I mean, they take the risk, and they may have multiple reasons, and because of their own physiology, they know that they're a little bit fearful of vaccines and other things. I actually know a nurse out here locally, and she's a conservative Republican. I don't know why she chose not to get vaxxed. She has been on a ventilator, though she's getting close to getting off now, apparently. That may change her mind when she gets full recovered in terms of how she looks at this thing going down the line. But I don't know. I mean, that may not. I mean, these are decisions they make. I'm not going to criticize people for that. But I do find these things where the mandates are coming out, where you have like JP Morgan, you have Citigroup and things like that. These companies are saying, we're going to fire people who are not vaccinated by this date. They're not even using the testing option. This is it. Either you show that you're fully vaccinated or you're out of a job. And I think in the way things are going today, I think that's the wrong decision. Yeah, there are a lot of people that are still out of work that are looking for jobs, but that doesn't mean that the people you fire you can replace right away either. You've probably invested tens of thousands of dollars in training them and getting to the point they are. This doesn't seem like a very wise decision on my part, and it also interferes with their rights. I mean, what is wrong? I mean, what's wrong with saying, okay, if you don't want to get vaccinated, then just get the COVID test. I mean, and there's a lot of these places now that say, okay, if you don't want to get vaccinated, you need to get tested, but the testing is now on you. We're not paying for it. So they are imposing now, and a lot of people are imposing an additional burden on people, kind of forcing them into the vaccine mode. It's like, geez, it's like, I'd rather just get tested, but those tests can add up if I got to get regularly tested, and my employer's not going to cover it now. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you can get them for free. Local governments all offer them for free.
Well, if you want to wait in one of those lines that people,
and you got to go somewhere. I think there's like 4 places in Fairfax County, right?
The picture of the day of the line in Montgomery County at the libraries is like, okay, I have no problem about handing out the free test kits. I have no problem about having those test centers. I mean, that's fine, but it's this. Almost like this knee-jerk reaction that because of the news reports of Omicron, that everybody thinks that they've got it. They're worried. They're so worried. They're not feeling any symptoms whatsoever, and then they spend hours in a line to either get a kit or get tested. It's like, if you're not feeling the symptoms, what the heck are you? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And
it's like,
and the people
then I better go get another booster to get safe. And and they're telling them, this doesn't work on Omicron. Right? I'm going to go get a shot to stop Omicron. Yeah. And the vax maker, the head of Pfizer is like, well, what we have doesn't really work against Omicron. We'll have something in March. Of course, Omicron will be over in March, right? It won't matter at all by March what you do about Omicron. I mean, the cases are already peaking,
we're expecting it to peak fairly soon. And so that all this hysteria hopefully will die off. But yeah, it's like a lot of things. I mean, we're seeing officials one after the other saying, we're going to have to live with this. You and I have known this for a long time, but it takes these public health officials now. It's taken them forever to finally admit that, look, we're not going to get rid of this. We're not going to eradicate this thing anytime soon.
You're not going to vax your way out of it. You're not going to mask your way out of it. You're not, right? It's endemic. We're all going to get it.
Right. I mean, and so, okay. So yeah, like I'm resigned to that fact. I mean, it's like, but I've known that. I mean, it's like, if I get it, I get it. I'm kind of feeling like I've dodged the bullet by not getting it at this point, but the odds are that at some point in time, I will get some variant of this. It's pretty hard to not get affected at some point in time by something that is this widespread. I mean, I've never had a flu shot, but I've had the flu several times in my life. Yeah, so it's going. The odds are it's going to happen, but the way they portray this is just it's total insanity in how this is going. And we're seeing that I gave a friend of mine a couple of Caps tickets I got from my financial advisor, and one of the things in there I noticed as I got the tickets from the advisor was that when the Capitals say, just be aware of the indoor, not just the indoor mask mandate, but the vax card requirement to go into Capital One Arena. It's like, this is the last thing I want to do. Okay, I will live. I'm getting used to wearing the mask. We've been doing this off and on for the last couple of years. But the idea that I've got to bring the stupid vax card to get into a sporting event.
Show your papers, right?
Yeah, right. Show my papers. Where am I in the Soviet Union?
I'm not doing it. They say that I don't go. It's like,
well, yeah. I mean, I've got.
When you return, your sanity returns, I'll come give you some more money.
Yeah,
but I'm not doing it now.
I've got that. I've got somewhere on the calendar. I don't remember what date it was. Have the thing to go. They got oversubscribed, so that, instead of being in a suite, they're going to put us in the lower bowl, but part of the University of Maryland to invite to a future basketball game. But they have now instituted the same vax card deal there too. I'm like, I don't care. I'm not going.
Yeah.
I am not going to bow down to that. I am just going to ignore that. I mean, I'm going to send them an email saying, like, just take me off the list, because this requirement is ridiculous and I'm not coming. I'm not giving you a dime. I'm not doing anything until you come to your senses on this issue.
Come to your senses. That's right.
Yeah.
Y'all are the ones being crazy about it, not us, right?
Yeah. Montgomery County is about to, they're going to have a hearing, or if they haven't had one already, about, having the vaccine passport in restaurants. Houses of worship and grocery stores are exempt, but gyms and dining establishments, it's like, okay, I just, the places I go to, the few places I go to eat out, I just can't imagine they're going to be too enthusiastic about checking everybody's vax card before they take their order, right? As I said, I think on Twitter the other day, it's like, this not just boil down to like They won't deliver your food until you show them your Vax card. You can't pick up your food for carryout until you show them your Vax card. I mean, when I go to the gym, I'm going to have to show them my Vax card. I don't think the guys at the gym are going to be overly, every time I go to the gym, they're going to be going nuts. I think a lot of the people going to the gym will stop going to the gym, because they just don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, we're at the point where, you guys are in the wrong and you guys need to sober up. I'm prepared to wait them out at this point because you kind of know, they're not going to win. The momentum is in our favor, right? These things are not working. In Ontario province of Canada, the vax is negative efficacy against Omicron. In other words, if you have a vax, you are more likely to get it. Okay, so you're telling me to take something to prevent the disease, but the shot you're giving me makes it more likely that I will catch that disease. Okay, that's nonsense. And then you're going to punish me for not taking it. You guys are completely nuts. And that's to say nothing of the adverse reaction profile. This has gotten completely nuts, and the Democrats own every bit of it. And the one like scientific accomplishment involved in the whole thing, they can't take credit for because it happened under Trump, right? So everything since then has been, and you can tell a couple of things are going on. One is, there was a report leaked, I guess, late last week that said, some a group of doctors had written to Biden saying, you need a complete rethink of your COVID policy. You guys are completely out of touch. You have no idea what you're doing, and it's killing you politically, and you're not helping the country. And you can start to see that, like, the knives are out for Fauci, right? Fauci's the thing about the monkeys, trans monkeys, and the that he knew what he taught. I guess James O'Keefe put out something that said, that contradicted sworn testimony Fauci had given to Congress about the vaccines, about the efficacy and the adverse reactions and so forth. And you just start to see little things come up that would give the administration an excuse to get rid of it, right? And I think you're starting to see all these things line up, because I believe that they realize that if they can't get out from under this, they are going to it's going to be a bloodbath in 2022 and 2024 beyond the extent to which they're capable of cheating.
Yeah, no, it's just the reputation or the credibility of Fauci and Walensky and these people pretty much shot. I mean, I don't know who wants to believe these people when they're up there and everything. All right, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So let's see a few things out there. All right, another thing they did that I want to say before we go into that is, this business about, every industry that the prices go up. Oh, it's the greed of the conglomerates. It's like, no, it's not the greed of the conglomerates, dude. And grocery stores are starting to empty out, right? There is starting to be a major, noticeable supply chain problem in this country. And they can, bare shelves. Biden was trending all weekend. They need to get it in front of this. I thought good. I wanted to say this about, though, you have one thing in there I want to talk about. The Pope called out couples who put pets ahead of children. And what he was saying is, there are people who say, instead of having kids, we're just going to have pets. Okay, well, pets don't propagate the race, right? Pets don't propagate the faith. They live 15 years if you're lucky, and then you get another one. It's not like their son becomes the one, right? So there's some residual effect to the parenting you gave the pet. You start over with each generation with them. So I think what he's saying, there's some merit to it, right? There's a lot of people who it's very easy to find a surrogate, a proxy for actually doing the work of having a family. And a lot of people, they want, you want easy ways to do things, right? And it's easier. Pets are easier than children, right? You don't have to go to school. You don't have to, register with the health department. You don't have to take them to the dentist, all that kind of stuff. Whereas, with people you do. So, it is sort of a thing that's happening in our society, and birth rates are down, especially in the Catholic parts of the world. And you're gonna, I think he had a point to make. I think
No, I mean, I absolutely agree. That's one of the reasons I had on there, is because I absolutely agree with the Pope on this. He's been criticized for a lot of things by the conservatives, but the conservatives probably should cheer him on this, because he's 100% right. I mean, I think both of us have seen particularly kind of the Gen X, the millennials, where they have, they get married. They're not going to be married as much as our generation did, percentage wise, but they get married. But rather than having kids, they just take on 2 or 3 pets or whatever instead, and that they're very happy having their kind of yuppie middle class lifestyle or whatever. They take care of the pets, they love the pets, but they don't have, like you said, schooling and all these other things. Now to me they lose out on the joy of parenting. I mean, they don't understand the joy of parenting.
How absolutely hilarious it is. I mean, every once in a while they do something bad, you got to go clean it up, right? But for the most part, it's really funny, and like the stuff they do and say is hilarious. I think people miss like how hilarious it is to have kids.
And as you said, propagating the faith and everything like that. But it is, worldwide, virtually everywhere in the world, this is becoming a problem of where the replacement rate is well below where it needs to be. So there, and I go back to a film that a guy did many years ago. It's probably been 20 years, and he called it Demographic Winter, and it was basically looking at he was looking at Europe and Asia 20 years ago and making an extrapolation, which is coming true. Europe has got a big problem. Asia's got a big problem. These countries. China's getting killed for their one-child policy. This is backfiring on them big time. So exactly where are the people going to come from when all these people out there not having kids? It's like, thank goodness that my daughter's going to have kid number 6, at this point. That helps, but that's only to try to balance out some of the averages. I mean, so it's interesting to see how many young couples they show very little interest in having children. And, in the old days, I mean, going up in the 50s and 60s, we knew Catholic families were large, right? They're not necessarily as large. Even Mormon families are not necessarily as large as they used to.
And we go to early mass, right? We go at 7:30 in the morning most of the time, but it's like we talk about, how long it is between hearing kids cry in church, right? The old days, you heard kids cry every time you went to church, and that's good. That means there's kids in church, right? But the parents, everybody's been that parent. You push your kid and walk them outside or whatever. And so we all know, everybody who's been a parent, no one gives you that stare, right? All the people give you that stare were not parents, because they've never been in that situation. All the parents are like, I'm looking away so this guy doesn't feel bad about his kid being noisy, right? So, we go weeks at a time sometimes, and we don't hear any kids in church. We don't hear them any crying, and it's bad. It needs to be there. You need the kids there.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's so we're both in agreement. The Pope definitely is right on this. He doesn't deserve the criticism. I mean, there was a lot of criticism from a lot of those millennial type of pet owners and others. But I think he was on target on this, and he said something that needed to be said. I mean, and that's what burned a lot of people, because it really stung the people. I think that they're hearing that, coming out from a guy like that. All right, we need to wrap up here. Thanks everyone for joining us again today. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well and healthy. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anybody tell you otherwise. And of course, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.